Hats off to entrepreneurs. You bring value to our community by creating jobs and building wealth. Aspire Enterprise of Florida is your premier one-stop resource for strategic business coaching, business trainings, and business services. Our elite team of business professionals have over 30 years of expertise to serve small business owners, not-for-profit organizations, and individuals. Aspire Enterprise, where your needs are our priority.
Palm Bay and our surrounding communities, I would like to thank you for your tremendous support. As we move into the fall months, Palm Bay Live is seeking your support so we can continue to deliver valuable programming. Your monetary donations will help us so we can achieve those goals. You can donate online at www.palmbaylive.com. Advertisers are also welcome. Palm Bay Live is a non-profit organization. Thank you for your continued support.
For nearly 60 years, most politicians running for office in Palm Bay promised to fix the city's failing roads. In 2017, armed with a plan, Thomas Gaume and a small team of residents set out to accomplish this enormous task.
The need for alternate paths that are smoother than the roads, and the term grassfault will soon be a distant memory.
Tom believes in duplicating success. He started by visiting Northport, Florida, a GDC community exactly half the size of Palm Bay. Northport successfully fixed their roads with a road bond referendum, and Tom made several trips to Northport to fully understand the process.
In the 2018 election, 66% of Palm Bay voters approved a $150 million bond referendum. Now we're turning our failed roads into an economic engine to diversify our tax base and lure commercial businesses,
while at the same time looking out for the environment and the delicate ecosystem we call home.
That's what sets Thomas Gaume apart. He solves problems by creating teams of citizens to conquer even the most difficult issues. You might say that Tom is the man with a plan. Vote Thomas Gaume for Palm Bay City Council Seat 3 on November 3rd. For your family, your property, and our future.
Approved and paid for by Thomas Gaume for Palm Bay City Council Seat 3, nonpartisan.
Who am I? I'm someone that believes in community and that dedicates hundreds of hours every year to serving the people of Brevard. Who am I? I'm a scholar that supports and believes in education, that donates countless dollars and hours to helping scholars learn, grow, and be better for our future. Who am I? I'm an advocate that stands up for those who can't stand up for themselves and that protects and defends the Constitution every single day. I'm Alton Edmond, and I'm running for Brevard County Sheriff. It's time for change.
Hello, Palm Bay. Randy Foster, candidate for Palm Bay City Council Seat 3. This political advertisement is approved and paid for by Randy Foster, candidate for Palm Bay City Council Seat 3. Public safety is important. As a councilman, that should be the number one priority when you come in office, public safety. And the people who provide that safety, who serve and protect, is Palm Bay Police Department and Palm Bay Fire Department. I went through a 2-hour process for each interview for an endorsement with Palm Bay Police and the Fire Department. The Palm Bay Fraternal Order Police, Lodge 111, endorsed me. Also, Palm Bay Fire Department endorsed me for the City Council Seat 3. My opponent decided not to go in front of them. He decided to go to the Space Coast Association of Realtors. Has nothing to do with public safety, and none of them probably works in Palm Bay. But I would have took the time out if I was him. And here are the men and women that serves and protect and keep you safe at home. So remember this when you go to the polls in November. If your brother, your sister, your uncle, your father, your cousin, your friend is a police officer in Palm Bay or a fighter, my opponent don't care what they're going through as a candidate running for office. I do. That's why they endorse me. Thank you, Palm Bay. And remember, I'm the only one with law enforcement experience and a history of providing safety throughout the public throughout these United States. Vote randyfoster.com. Vote for Randy Foster, a true leader. Thank you.
Hello, Palm Bay. I am Kay Mirage, and I'm running to be your next mayor. I currently sit on the Planning and Zoning Board, as well as our Community Development Advisory Board. I'm a mom, I'm a small business owner, and I've been married to my husband, Lynn Volk, for 19 years. And together we have an amazing 17-year-old son who's about to head off to college. Palm Bay needs fresh, bold leadership, one who is an embracer of change, diversity, and inclusion, who is proactive and thinks outside the box. They need to be free from conflicts of interest and owes no favors to the who's who. Our next mayor should be informed and have a true understanding of the issues and be ready with plans to help solve them. They must be open to have dialogue with you and empathize with your concerns. I am that leader. I'm ready to work with council to earn back public trust, bring transparency and accountability to all levels of city government. I am your voice, and I'm that unifying force that is ready to guide our city towards smart growth and a very successful future. For more information, visit palmbayk.com. Vote K Mirage for Palm Bay Mayor. K is the right choice for Palm Bay. I'm K Mirage, and I approve this message.
A Christian, husband, father, long-term Palm Bay resident, small business owner, real estate investor, builder, humanitarian, has served as executive board member of multiple local non-profit organizations. He's currently serving on the City of Palm Bay Planning and Zoning Board and also the Vice Chairman of the Palm Bay Park and Recreation Advisory Board. He's experienced in city affairs and ready to go on day one. That's Donnie Felix. He stands for transparency, a strong infrastructure, supporting city staff, first responders, fire and police, diverse and affordable housing, small businesses and good-paying jobs, economic growth and sustainability for Palm Bay, and also a healthy environment for integrity, diversity, and service. Vote for Donnie Felix for Palm Bay City Council C2.
My name is Donnie J. Felix, and I approve this message.
Hi, Palm Bay. I'm Ron Medina, your candidate for mayor. With your support, when elected, we will immediately move forward to take the necessary actions to restore transparency, to restore accountability, responsibility, and the respect of our beloved city. It's evident through recent audit findings and oversights meeting in Tallahassee that our city has engaged in financial decisions that clearly have put our citizens and our financial stability at risk. The headlines of our city once promoted a city that cares, finalists for a City of the Year, and a community with a great future. Now, today, the headlines promote our city as one with escalating crime, an interchange to nowhere, mismanagement, state-imposed audits, and playgrounds closing due to equipment being unsafe. We must stop this downward spiral of our once financially secured, beautiful community. We drive through flooded roads, potholes, and traffic jams. I pledge to you as your next mayor, I will shine light on these past budgets along with the poor decisions made so we can get the answers our citizens deserve and our state leaders demand. I encourage a forensic audit of all our city operations so we can bring all these things to light. This process will not be easy, but our future and that of our children depend on each and every one of us, ensuring accountability, ensuring professionalism, immediately replacing finger pointing, mismanagement, the rubber stamp process that brought this audit upon us. There are many serious questions. The business and residents of our cities deserve a government that they can trust and believe in. It is important to address these issues head on, for they've made a target of ridicule and skepticism from our surrounding neighbors and our very own residents. This will require strong leadership, transparent and sensible policy decisions, and constant commitment to ethical conduct. As mayor, my first goal will be to restore trust in our government. Government for the people, by the people. This is truly an opportunity for leadership by example. And as your mayor, I pledge to you that if I vote to approve a contract with a company to do business with our city, I will prohibit myself from receiving any future campaign funds from that said company. And I will encourage our council members to do the same. I believe as elected officials, we're held to a higher standard. The citizens of Palm Bay will be my only priority. We will address the many concerns of the finding of the state audit and encourage the open participation of our residents to provide oversight in our budget process. Hashtag the public trust. For a better Palm Bay, elect Rob Medina. May God bless you. May God continue to bless this great city we call Palm Bay. Hoorah! Hoorah!
Hi, good evening, Palm Bay. Welcome to Palm Bay Live. With me tonight, actually, is Mr. Phil Moore. This is my second interview for the day. For those who catch the earlier one, I interviewed Commissioner Tobiah at 4 o'clock this evening. That is going to be out there on YouTube and on the Facebook page. You can go and check that out. But tonight I have Mr. Phil Moore with me. And you know, there's a lot of issues that came up over the last couple of days in regards to him and his candidacy and his opponent. So we are going to kind of do something different tonight, and it's going to be a treat. Once we decided, we talked about it behind the scenes, and we decided we're going to take some community questions. This is going to be done after I ask him my questions, but we're going to entertain some community questions because I know you guys have a lot of questions in regards to this subject of what's happening in the last couple of days between him and his opponent. So we will be entertaining some community questions only on education. However, I will be having Mr. Moore back on, I think it's going to be the 27th, somewhere around there, for where we can entertain more personal questions. So he has a third interview with me. So this is his second interview with me, and he has a third interview. I believe it's going to be on the 27th. I have to check my calendar. And so at that point in time, we will be able to entertain more in-depth personal questions with him. And at that point in time, I may open it up to the public as well for you guys to throw questions at him. But without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Moore. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Hi, good evening, Kevin. Hello, everybody on Palm Bay Live. Glad to be here this evening, and thank you for your work that you're doing. I know this isn't your full-time job, and this is your second interview for the day, but I'm sure all of the people who watch the show and all of the citizens appreciate this information that you're able to give to them. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you. And like I said, I'm going to start out with environment and work our way back. That way we'll be able to entertain some audience questions at some point. So let's start with environment. And we're going to, like we agreed, we're going to limit the questions on this topic because you said you can go all night on this because this is your passion as well. And we will be able to bring some of these questions back on the 27th, hopefully. All right. Let me just pick apart some questions here for you so we can get this started. We already know who you are, sir. So for those who don't know, can you introduce yourself before we begin again?
Sure. Thanks. Briefly, my name is Phil Moore, candidate for state representative in South Brevard County, District 53. Ran in 2018, running again in 2020 this year, and hoping to bring some integrity back to and professionalism back to the state rep position. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm running. Running because I feel that we need more representation of the working class citizen in Tallahassee, which is what I am as opposed to my opponent. I know we need to deal with some of the main things that are our main issues and emergencies of today, which is COVID and the unemployment issues of the state of Florida. And I want to go to Tallahassee and try to fix those problems, as well as make sure that we put in the proper procedures to deal with the next emergency that we might have. Those are two of the main priorities, but those kind of push some of the other bigger platform issues down the ladder a little bit, which is education, the environment, and of course, they all play a role in the economy, which is a major issue that we need to deal with in the state of Florida too. So those are some of the main things why I'm running, and happy to be here tonight.
Awesome, sir. Thank you. Why is infrastructure essential to a healthy and vibrant community? Why is it essential?
Yeah, so we really need to look at making sure that we have a sustainable infrastructure and one that is going to be friendly towards what's happening with our environment, which is climate change. We want to make sure that we have clean water, clean air, and we want to make sure that we're using renewable energy sources when we can. And that's part of that's been failing in Tallahassee. Just to give you a little bit of history and why I didn't want to, we could go on and about the environment is because I've been an environmental activist in the state of Florida for some time now. And I've gone to Tallahassee and fought for environmental protections throughout the state and here in Brevard County. And one of the things that I've seen happen is the people in Tallahassee really put on the back burner or really don't even put much emphasis or protections on is when we're dealing with global warming or fossil fuels. And even so recently as this last legislative session, we were looking at how we're dealing with hurricanes. And instead of using solar and renewable energy resources there, which I would look to propose, they actually looked at putting in more generators as backups in case we have power failures, which I think we should do that with solar. So that's one of the things I'm looking at, replacing our infrastructure and especially our aging infrastructure with new solar, with new renewable energy resources so that we're actually looking to sustain these issues and have the infrastructure in place so that when we have emergencies, we have the proper energy resources to be able to deal with those emergencies.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. You're committed to ensuring that clean, safe drinking water is accessible to all. Do you believe that lack of clean water is an issue in Palm Bay and in District 53 on the whole?
Yeah, so it's a great question about bringing it to the district. And it isn't so much in the district, but again, as a state representative, my job would influence what happens in the entire state of Florida. And I can go on a little bit about that, but there have been issues from state legislators where they're allowing for-profit companies like Nestle to buy Florida's water and then sell it back to us. And that's actually taking our own water and not saying that it's no longer ours, water that belongs to Floridians. And we're looking at the fact that there are other companies that are polluting our waterways, mostly in Central Florida, not so much here, down in Lake Okeechobee too. And we need to make sure that those entities are using best practices so that they are not leaving our waters polluted and leaving us with nothing for drinking water.
Okay, awesome, sir. How will you protect the Indian River Lagoon, sir?
Yeah, so this has been an issue for me for a long time now. I've been here in Brevard County since 1996. And I've seen the degradation over time of the Indian River Lagoon. I used to swim, kayak, paddleboard miles and miles of the lagoon, from Palm Bay all the way up to Merritt Island and back, and swim from causeway to causeway. I don't do that anymore because the river is on the verge of collapse. But there's a lot of things we need to do. And one of the things that I was a proponent of was the half-cent sales tax that was put in place to help us build up the monies needed to do the studies, first of all, so that we follow the science, to do the studies to make sure that we're going to work in the right manner to fix the Indian River Lagoon. So the studies were done, the science and the information was gathered. And one of the best things we could have done and continue to do to help the Indian River Lagoon is remove the muck. The muck is what gives off this nitrogen off-gassing, which is one of the main contributors to the degradation of the lagoon. The other things that we need to look at is everything that's washing into the lagoon. So runoff. Runoff has been a huge contributor for decades, and we need to make sure that we're capturing as much runoff from the lagoon to make sure that that's not going in and creating more muck and more problems. And the third thing is infrastructure. human waste that from breaking pipes or leaking septic tanks, old aging infrastructure needs to be continually upgraded. And that hasn't happened in Brevard County because infrastructure, as one commissioner once said, and I love the saying, infrastructure isn't sexy. It's not something it's out of sight, out of mind. We don't see the pipes underground breaking until it's too late. Then we realize we need to fix the problem there. So it's a combination of all these things. I think Brevard County did a really good thing by putting in that 0.5-cent sales tax. I wish we had a state legislator that was going to go to Tallahassee and ask for matching funds. I feel like that would have been a huge advantage because we were one of the first counties to show that we really wanted to do something about the Indian River Lagoon. And I feel that's where we really missed out on. We didn't have a good legislator who was going to look for matching funds for the Indian River Lagoon. I want to continue doing that work, and I want to continue working with the science and the scientists and see what we can do to continue to improve the Indian River Lagoon. I want to be able to swim in there again and enjoy kayaking and seeing down to the bottom and seeing seagrass grow and the fish swimming. And I want to come back to that. And I think we can get there. It's just going to take time.
Okay, awesome. I thank you so much. Like I said, for those who are just joining us, we're going to be allowing tonight a special treat. We're going to be allowing some questions from the audience once we get to education. So just stand by for that. We're just covering environment right now. There's two topics we're covering tonight, education and environment. So we're not going to be doing any personal questions. We're just going to be sticking to the topic of, so let's go to climate change. What is your top priority when it comes to the environment, when it comes to climate change?
Well, climate change really is, if you think about it, it's the emergency or it's the world pandemic, and it's one that needs to be addressed. It is an emergency. And I use this analogy because I think it really hits home for people in Brevard. We've known since the 90s that the Indian River Lagoon needed help, that was on the verge of collapse. The scientists had talked about it for decades. And I've lived here since 1996. Still was in good condition, but they said, hey, we need to start working on fixing the Indian River Lagoon. We need to address it. If we don't address it, things are going to get a lot worse. And it wasn't until the point where the Indian River Lagoon was on the verge of collapse that finally the citizens said, this river looks terrible. This is awful. We need to do something about this, that we can't see it anymore. There's no more living creatures in there anymore. We can't see the bottom. We need to do something. And that's really what's happening with climate change and global warming. The scientists have been crying to us that there needs to be change. We need to do something about this now, or else we're on the verge of collapse. And I think that message saying that way hits home with what we need to do. We need to address these issues now with global warming. We need to look at what we're doing in terms of producing carbon and fossil fuels. We need to switch over as quickly as possible to carbon neutral and renewable energy resources. It should be a priority in the next legislative session and sessions moving forward, especially in a state like Florida, when we can so abundantly use solar and renewable energy resources. So it is a priority. It's something that we do need to address immediately. And we need good legislators in office who don't want to kick this can continually down the road and wait till we can't do anything else about it.
Energy. Where do you stand on renewable energy?
Yeah, so we kind of touched upon that briefly. So actually, one of the first bills I want to introduce is a bill that will help out our local district in terms of energy. This is not something new. It's being done in other cities throughout the state of Florida. But one of the biggest energy hogs are wastewater treatment facilities. And wastewater treatment facilities run all the time. And we don't want them to stop running, because when wastewater treatment facilities stop running, septic starts backing up. This is obviously an issue that happens when we have hurricanes. We really worry about everything starting to back up. And we always hear that things are getting shut off and turned back on so that they're watching the pressure levels. Well, one of the first things that a lot of other cities are doing is there's a huge buffer zone around these wastewater treatment facilities because nobody's going to want to live right next to it. That buffer zone allows for the perfect space to put out a whole slew of solar panels. And those solar panels can feed energy to those wastewater treatment facilities. That's something we can do immediately. That's something that should be a no-brainer. And it's also going to start to bring in jobs and people to put those infrastructure solar panels in place. And I'd like to see that here in Brevard County. I'd love to start that off in the district. And I think that's where we really need to go in terms of moving towards renewable energy resources.
Okay, sir. Skip on over to fracking, sir. Is fracking a threat to Brevard, and why?
It's not so much an issue in Brevard County, but it is in our neighboring county. It's, again, something that I've gone to Tallahassee and advocated against, and we actually made major changes on this. We were able to change some minds of people who were once for fracking, some legislators, and we actually got them on board to say, you know what, fracking is not viable. It's not a good option in the state of Florida. We're flat. We're pancake flat. You're going to drill down. We have a huge aquifer under this state that recharges our energy, our water resources. And if we start fracking, we're going to ruin our ability to get clean water when we drill down to the aquifer. So as an activist, I've seen that, you know, we were able to make some changes in fracking. I do not want to see fracking in the state of Florida. It's something that they look in other areas of the nation because of, they're higher up. They have better natural gas pockets. But here in the state of Florida, it's not worth the risk. It's not worth the environmental danger that it's good. It could possibly affect the state of Florida.
Okay. Should we privatize the beaches, Phil?
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that question. I appreciate that. So I'm a native Floridian. I've lived here my entire life, except for going to school and then moving right back down because I realized I can't stand the cold weather. So for me, the beaches were always something that was part and parcel of growing up in South Florida. We always just went to the beach. We had the beaches available to us. I think as a Floridian, that is just something that's ingrained in our mind that it's the beaches. It's part of us. It's something we own because if we want tourists to come here, we say, these are our beaches. These are Florida's beaches. We want you to come enjoy our beautiful beaches. And so it's something that I think it's innate, it's ingrained in us somehow that the beaches are just for us to enjoy as Floridians. It's something that we get to have, and we allow others to come here and enjoy that as well. It is something that I can't believe that legislators actually put in place, that there's actually privatization of beaches now. It doesn't affect us here in Brevard County directly because the way that the law worked was it grandfathered in municipalities or counties that had a public beach ordinance in place already. It did affect some places in the state of Florida, though, and especially those places where people are wealthy and might have a home on the beach. That's strictly who this bill was written for. And unfortunately, my opponent voted yes on this bill. And yes, he does have a home on the beach. And so that was quite coincidental that he would vote yes on a bill where he has a home on the beach. I totally think this was a bad move. I feel like if I was to be able to get into Tallahassee, when I get into Tallahassee, I would look at repealing this bill because in no way, shape, or form should any citizen of Florida not be able to go anywhere on land. And this actually, short story, this actually has affected us, or friends of mine who live in Florida, and especially during these COVID times. When the beaches did open in certain counties, people started going to the beach again. Well, they didn't want to congregate in certain areas. Well, what ended up happening was a friend of mine said, you know what, I'm not going to go where everybody's located. I'm going to go away, farther away on the beach. Well, walking down the beach, and then what happened to her? She was actually told, you can't be on this portion of the beach. This is private. You have to go back where everybody else is. And that is part of the problem. That should not happen. That is completely wrong. Especially when we're looking to try to make sure that we're moving people away and keeping people separated. So that's one small issue that me and my opponent actually differ on. And I encourage everybody to look at my opponent's voting record on environmental issues. He's here, and when he comes into town and he touts himself as an environmentalist, and he says he's the champion of the Indian River Lagoon. But if you look at the bills that he's actually voted in favor of, They are some of the most devastating environmental bills that we have in the state of Florida. And I'm talking about bills like MCORS, which actually will build a whole new toll road, $10 billion, where we can't even afford to spend that money. That's going to put a huge superhighway from Naples all the way through West Florida and Central Florida, all the way up to the state line. It's going to destroy some of the most environmental endangered lands where the black bear and the Florida panther habitate. It's going to be an environmental nightmare if that passes. In fact, it passed in Tallahassee with no scientific studies, and it didn't even get approval from the local areas where it was going to be going through. They're actually saying they don't want it. Some of the counties where it's going to go blazing through, they're like, we don't want this here. We don't want this huge interstate coming through. But this was one of the major bills that he voted for. If you want to talk on other environmental bills, we can talk on what are called preemption bills. Bills where they write in Tallahassee and it affects the entire state of Florida. We have municipalities in the state of Florida that looked at trying to ban plastics, plastic straws, single-use plastic bags. Randy Fine voted against both of those bills. Or I know he voted against the plastic straw bill. I think the plastic bag bill might have been right before he got into office. But these are environmental bills. And if we go, when I go on my beach cleanups, and my river cleanups, which I do on occasion, started back up after COVID. One of the main culprits that I'm picking up is plastic. That's one of the biggest polluters that we have. And again, it's something that we need to address now. And it's a travesty that they would go to Tallahassee and vote against environmental protections, like being able to, for the municipalities that want to. That's not for every municipality, but those that want to put, and they have the citizens backing, can put together a plastic ban. And the last one that I'll just touch on, and there's hundreds more, I told you I didn't want to talk too much about this tonight because I could go on and on about the environment, is another preemption bill. This one affecting our coral reefs. And if anybody's ever been snorkeling down in the Keys, which I've done, and in Miami, being from South Florida, they were looking at a bill locally that would ban a certain chemical that they're looking at that is looking to bleach our corals. Well, Randy Fine voted against being able to ban that specific chemicals that's in sunscreen. So there's other types of sunscreen out there. But rather than banning the sunscreen that has this chemical, or sunscreens that want to put this chemical in, they voted up in Tallahassee, no, you can't ban that chemical. Now, if you look at who makes that chemical, it's Johnson & Johnson. And all you have to do is follow the money there, look to see where Randy Fine gets his PAC money from, or even his campaign money from, and if he's gotten any money from Johnson & Johnson. And the same holds true for the others. See if he's gotten money from the oil industry, who happens to make plastic products. So see where his money comes from and see where he stands on environmental bills. And I just wanted to make sure that I talk about that.
Awesome, Phil. Well, the hot topic. Welcome to education.
Yes.
It's been in the news now. Well, not in the news, on social media. You see what's been generated by your opponent. So let's start talking about that. Let's have that conversation now. Now, audience, remember, I'm going to allow questions, but allow me to go through my line of questioning here for a bit. But please stick the questions only to education for now. I'm not going to entertain any personal questions or any off-topic questions. Only educational topic questions I will entertain for this discussion. So, Phil, Randy Fine recently made a statement on Facebook regarding your stance on charter schools in Florida, claiming that you would shut down all charter schools in Florida and end the voucher programs for low income and children with special needs. The question is this true?
And I can emphatically say no. I'll start off with that, just with a no, and then let me expand on my answer there. So this was something that Randy used as a talking point in 2018 when I ran then. I did an interview with Florida Today, and there was a corrected statement at that time when we talked about charter schools and the verbiage of what is a charter school, what's a private school, what's a public charter school, and so on and so forth. And I think the verbiage is what's confusing. And I think he just wanted to run with that. And at first he made a Facebook post, and then more recently, I don't know if you're going to talk upon this, and I don't want to jump ahead, but then he went ahead and he did a robo-text to everybody saying that if you're going to talk about that, I won't jump ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me continue on then and talk about where I stand on charter schools and voucher programs. So again, Randy's statement couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I have been an advocate and worked with schools that have helped children with special needs. In my years here, I actually put on cycling events. I've been an advocate for pedestrian and cycling safety for over 10 years here in Brevard County. And one of the things that I've done in that time is I've helped put on cycling charity events for schools who help out children with special needs. So that is something that is actually near and dear to my heart. I enjoy doing that type of work and helping them out. And it is in no way, shape, or form correct. It is a falsehood to say that I'm looking to try to take those voucher programs away or shut down charter schools.
Okay. Is there a difference between private charter schools and public charter schools? Because I think that's where we got lost in the theory. Explain that for me.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and it differs throughout the state of Florida where you're located. And this wouldn't affect us here in Brevard County, but there are schools in the state that run on a for-profit basis. All right, and they're considered charter schools, and they run on a for-profit basis. So my stance would be, it's very simply, if you're a for-profit organization, you should not be getting tax dollars because you're running for a profit. You obviously don't need tax dollars if you're running for a profit. And that's not what that money is meant for. They're basically just fleecing your money away. I want to be a good steward of people's tax money. So if it's a for-profit organization, they shouldn't have tax dollars. And the same token, if they're an organization that is going to discriminate against children or their staff, then they shouldn't get tax dollars because they're actually going against what we stand for in our Constitution and as at the state level, that we're not going to discriminate against them. And that might be race, religion, creed, sexual orientation, anything. We shouldn't be discriminating against people, and we shouldn't be using tax dollars to discriminate against people. And the last thing for schools is if you're going to use our tax dollars, we want to make sure that you're held to the same standards of education that we're holding our public schools at. We want to create an equal and level playing field. And so if you're doing those things, if you're not for profit, if you are not following school standards, education standards set by the school boards of different counties and the state, and if you are not discriminating against anybody, then you're fine. Then all is good.
Okay, let's go to the text message. There's a text message that was sent out by Mr. Fine, and it reads, Brevard Public Schools alert candidate Phil Moore has proposed legislation to close Brevard charter schools and end all voucher programs for low dollars and special needs. 5,000 children forced into BPS neighborhood schools, causing overcrowding and big funding reductions. Vote no and Phil Moore.
I would hope, I really would hope that all the citizens that got that text message found that disturbing. And I know I did, because my first phone call from that was from a friend whose child got that text. At 9 years old, they ran over to their mother and thought the school had something to tell them. And she gave the phone to her mom. And so what we really need to look at is we really need to look at the credibility of the person who's claiming that I want to do all these things. He wants to deceive you by sending out a text message that says it's from Brevard Public Schools. That in and of itself, in my mind, he's lost all credibility, but this is not something new. He has done this since the moment he's been in office. He has tried to say that people are corrupt, your local politicians are corrupt. He's spent his last 4 years trying to divide the citizens so that he can stay in office. We fight better when we're divided and we forget what he's been doing. And rather than him talking about himself and his own failures in the education system and what he's been doing in Tallahassee, he'd rather shine the light. And I'm happy to talk about my platform. If he wants to give me the platform and talk about where I want to do it, I'm fine with that. But it shows that he doesn't want to talk about himself. He wants to deceive people by using BPS, and then he wants to deceive and then obviously just make up stuff and lie about what needs to happen or where I stand on these things. And he's lied in also on Facebook and in Florida Today articles as well. He's lied. And I'd hope we can talk about that too. But I hope that this speaks to the credibility of the person. And that's why we need to have better elected officials. And I hope people recognize that.
Okay, audience, I'm going to entertain questions. I'm going to be looking for questions in the comment section now. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. And while you're getting your questions ready, on the topic of education, let me ask some more. So you mentioned briefly about him utilizing the BPS logo, and I don't think I clarified that. The text that was sent out by Mr. Fine included the BPS logo, and BPS, from my understanding, sent out a text to families stating that the Brevard County School Board is aware of the recent use of the logo in a political advertisement communication that it did not have prior knowledge of, nor does the district condone. Your comments on that?
Yes, so it is disturbing. It speaks to the fact that. Oh, I'm sorry. Was I muted?
Yeah. No, I was saying there was more to that that text, but I just cut it short. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, to the logo, to the point of the logo, I mean, that speaks to how he wants to deceive. But it's actually more than that. It's actually a violation of elections law. And he actually broke the law by doing that. And today I filed a complaint with the Florida Elections Commission because he sent out that text without the consent from the organization to use that in his text. Now, if I wanted to do that, or any candidate, what I would do, if I was, say, maybe even endorsed by that organization, I would say, hey, can I get something in writing to say that I can send out a text with your approval and your endorsement? And they would do so. But what he did was not. He actually just went ahead and sent the text and then said, well, I can do that because I'm Randy Fine. And he flouts the law. And this is not the only time he flouts the law. He's flouted the law with blocking people on Facebook. He's flouted the law with where he actually lives in the district. So this is just a continuation of what we need to get rid of as your state representative. And I hope this complaint that I sent, it will take a little while. It's not going to be immediate to follow run its course. But it is fraud because that text represented themselves as BPS. And I don't know if BPS is going to do anything further about it, but I believe that they would have legal recourse on that issue as well.
Let's entertain our first question from the audience. And this is coming from Blake Clark. I'm going to put it here on the screen. Hopefully you can see that.
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe in parental choice?
So yes, thank you for that question, Blythe. I appreciate it. So I'm going to talk about my own past and one of the issues, the falsehoods and the lies that Randy is putting forth right now. And he is saying that I came from a rich family, which he knows nothing about my family. Why would he know anything about my family? And he is wrong. He is completely lying when he says that I came from a rich family. I came from a single mother household, and she was young and tried to raise me as the best she could. My family did put me through private school, and they did that by pooling in all extended family members had to chip in money to be able to send me to private school. They did that because they thought I needed a better education than the ones that were in the public school systems in South Florida at the time. And that speaks to what we need to change. We need to try to do both. We need to try to make sure that children have the best opportunity for education possible, but we also need to make sure that our public schools are fulfilling that need. And right now we're not there. So we are finding that we're actually falling on in the gap in public schools. We've been defunding public schools for years now. And only recently did we finally give a raise to teachers. Only recently. And I don't see that coming back on the table now that we're going to have a financial deficit due to COVID. I don't see us we'll fight for it. I certainly will. I'll fight for public education, and I'll fight for children to have the best education they can possibly have, because that's what I want to see. I recognize that I want my next generation to be better and smarter than I am. I want them to do better than I did. And so my family tried to afford me the same thing. They were not rich by any means. We were working middle to lower class. And everybody worked and everybody tried to do their best to help me out. But that was part of the issue. And that's something that I know we need to address. And I want to make sure that we're opening up those opportunities to make sure that children have the best education possible, and we can't neglect public schools in that process.
Okay, let me post another question. Let's take this one away. This one is coming from Dylan Henning. He asks, do you support the voucher system?
Yes, thank you, Dylan. And I've been answering this question over and over, unfortunately, because of what my opponent says. And I, again, stress the fact that he has, in my eyes, zero credibility. Why would you listen to a person who deceives you by putting out a post falsely coming from BPS? Why would you listen to that? But unfortunately, people do. And no, I do not want to defund or take away the voucher program in any form. The McKay, the Gardner program, these programs are set in place to help out special needs children and children with disabilities. And I recognize that they need extra. In fact, just going to briefly talk about, so one of my previous jobs, I was a substitute school teacher in physical education. That's what I have my master's in, is physical education. I was a substitute teacher for one summer in South Florida in the public school system. My job in that one time was to actually teach physical education to children with disabilities, because I had my master's degree that somehow made me more knowledgeable and an authority to be able to teach children with disabilities, which I loved doing. And it was something that I held near and dear to my heart at that time. Unfortunately, I picked up a job here in Melbourne. That brought me right to Melbourne right after that. And I worked in collegiate athletics right after doing that substitute teacher work. I only did it for one summer or one season. I think it was the fall season, and loved it. Half a school year, and loved it. So no, completely false. I do not want to take away any way, shape, or form that helps out children with special needs or children with disabilities.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions from the audience. Let me scroll up real quick. I don't know if I missed any. Okay. Let's ask this one. This is another one for Blythe Clark. I'm not sure if you answered this already. All charter schools in Florida are public according to Florida Statute 1002. Where are these private charter schools you mentioned?
There are schools that get state dollars that are private schools through voucher programs, not necessarily the ones for special needs or children with disabilities. And when they get those voucher programs, I'm fine with that as long as they are following the standards that they need to follow, those educational standards, that they're not going to discriminate, and that they are not a for-profit private entity. And if they fall into any three of those categories, then they shouldn't be getting tax dollars. In fact, it is also written in our state constitution that we shouldn't be using public dollars to fund private entities. So that's in our state constitution. So it's not really me talking. I would look to try to make sure that I'm following the state constitution.
Okay. Ms. Blythe Clark, I think the question you just posed is the same question, if I'm not correct. Let me know if that's a question that's coming through, but I think it's the same question, just worded differently. So let me know if you want that one posted as well.
That's why I used my standards versus, it is confusing. And unfortunately, that's just the way it's been designed. Right. It is to where they're going to use this new system versus a public school system. They've got to create a whole new system. And it is confusing for parents. It's confusing to the people that actually work there. And we want to make sure that they're going to be set to the same levels and equal standards that we have right now. And that's going to afford more opportunity for education.
Okay, great. While the community is getting their questions together, let me ask some more of my questions, if you don't mind. I think some of these you probably answered already. Let me know if you already did. Do you believe that private organizations should receive public funding? If not, why? I believe you answered
So
that.
again, we did answer that. I kind of the differential.
Right. Some public schools do not provide the same resources of public charter schools. Is it right to limit choices and access to educational resources?
Okay, so that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that if they're not getting the resources from public education, that would be my question. Why? Mm-hmm. Why are they falling through the cracks? Why are we not supporting, or that they feel the need that they need to go outside the public education system to be able to meet the needs of that child? Now, I understand there are cases, especially with special needs, children with disabilities, that we're not meeting those needs. But in fact, we're actually taking teachers or educators from the public education system and putting them into those charter schools to meet those needs so that they're teaching that and fulfilling those needs at the charter school. So really, it's all a matter of how much we've been funding the education system here in the state of Florida. And it's not been good. It's been abysmal. We are 45th in the nation in terms of public education. And it only moved up slightly from 47th. So if we want to look at what's been happening, and we want to talk about what I am going to do, let's talk about what my opponent has been doing. He's been in office for 4 years. How come our public education system is so abysmal right now? He's actually sat on the Appropriations Committee for Education. He also sits as the chair of the Higher Education Committee. I don't know if we're going to talk about higher education at all, but I'd love to talk about that and what he's been doing there. But that's really some of the questions. I want to make sure that we are going to be bringing in more funding and more resources into public education and helping our children out even more. And if that means that we look at where they're getting in charters, as long as they're following the standards, I'd love to see it go towards public education, but we want to make sure that our children aren't falling through the cracks.
Okay, awesome. Let's take this question from the community. Ms. Renee asks, how would you propose to strengthen our public education system? How can we make it better?
Yeah, so the first thing, very simply, is you want to have a legislator that is going to work with our local school board. And that is not something you have right now. You do not, my opponent does not play well with others. He's burned many bridges in this community. And that's the first thing you want, because if I know the needs from our school board, then I know what I need to go to Tallahassee and fight for. And that's just not for our school system. That's for our local municipalities that I'm supposed to be representing. And that is for the county that I'm supposed to be representing too. We want a good working relationship from the legislator and those other elected officials in office. You don't want to have a representative who is going to sit there and berate and say everybody else is corrupt. That is just divisive and not helpful at all. I know this might sound cliche-ish, but you really want a representative who's going to unite. And just look at the way we run our campaigns. One is trying to divide the citizens, trying to take their mind and focus off the real issues, the top priorities of what's been happening here in the state of Florida. Everything from COVID to the unemployment system. He's been dividing, and then he can conquer. But I've actually been looking to try to make sure that we build these bridges and unite the people. You guys are the voice. I'm looking to represent you. And that's, I think, the major way that we're going to so differ in terms of the way we represent the community.
Awesome, sir. Let's see. This is the comment, I think. Legislation has moved towards privatization, and when funds are drained from public education, that's when they start to make publics believe our schools are failing. We need strong, non-corrupt leaders who will fight for our schools and our teachers. That's a comment. Okay, you want to opine on that?
Thank you for the comment.
Okay, all right. All
I'm
right.
glad so many people are watching your show. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the service that you provide. I'll be in a moment of levity. I'll be honest. This was the first time I watched all the commercials.
Okay.
You've got a lot of ads going on there, and I appreciate that. You're trying to give everybody a good time and a fair amount of time sharing their platform, and I appreciate that.
No problem. Let's go on to higher education, since I don't see any more questions on charter schools. College affordability. Tuition for college is increasing, making it less accessible and cost prohibitive for many people who desire to pursue higher education, but cannot afford it. What can be done to make it more accessible?
Yeah, so that's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And I do know that's one of the main things that I want to look at and how we can help out this district, especially, as well as other districts throughout the entire state. I think one of the things we need to look towards is making sure that students coming out of high school have as many opportunities for employment as possible. And that would include opportunities outside of a 4-year degree where you can make a great living and you don't have to worry about the impounding debt that comes from a 4-year college. That's one of the things we need to do. Make sure that children or students have, their young adults have the avenues available to them so they can go and get a good job. And that manufacturing is a great example of that. We're looking at programs now and introducing those into our high schools where they come out already 2 years in and they're already ready to be working in a good manufacturing job. And I think that's great. In terms of colleges, we really need to figure out how to rein in the cost of college. It's been rising and rising and rising. But part of that problem, part of the equation is the fact that the cost of living has been going up, but our ability to pay for things has not followed. And this year on the amendments on the ballot, you'll see an option for a increase of a minimum wage. And I actually was proposing that in my prior campaign in 2018, and I'm an advocate for bringing forth what's called a livable wage following the cost of living and wherever that is located in the state of Florida. And I would advocate for and fight for that again. And I think that also is part of the problem. We haven't been keeping up with the cost of going to college with how much we can afford to be able to pay to go to college. That's part of the problem too. But college prices have been increasing over time. Now, I just want to take a moment and talk about higher education on where my opponent is, because he's been the chair of the Higher Education Committee, and that is a position of clout and power. And what he has actually done is try to limit and stop the ability for our children to seek a higher education. He threatened to shut down the largest university in the state of Florida, UCF, last year, and he wanted to close it down. And by the way, it was for something that they ended up finding that they were at no fault for. So again, he just throws this information out there, and then all of a sudden we have to react to it. And it turned out that all that information was wrong anyways. The president of that university ended up who was new at the time, ended up having to resign his position. And then afterwards, in an audit and process, they found out that UCF had done no wrong, that the monies that they used and was allocated for, they were using in the proper manner and function. So he's really just caused wreck and havoc through the school there. And the other one he's been doing only just recently is he's trying to merge 2 smaller universities into 2 larger ones. Again, limiting students' abilities to be able to seek higher education. And these are specialized schools. This is a polytechnic school and a liberal arts school. Very specialized schools, not something you can just go to any university and get. And so we need to have an other abundance of opportunities for students to be able to seek their education. And that also is part of it. We need to have diversity. We can't just have 4 big colleges and main universities in the state of Florida and just say, you're all going to one of the state schools. We need to have a multitude of choices for children to choose where they want to go to college in the state. So I hope that really sheds some light on the topic of higher education.
Do you think we could do more to encourage young people to go into teaching roles? And if so, what would you do to encourage them to move in that direction?
Yes, and it's not just teaching. I mean, there's a lot of roles we see that we're lacking. And I think another one might be the police force. I know that's not talking about education, but I think people don't want to move into those jobs for a number of reasons. Job security might be one of them. We have here only until recently was retention was a problem. We get, even for our firefighters and EMS, they get trained here and get better paid down in Indian River County or in Orange County. I'm sorry, I'm pointing and they can't see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so retention based on job pay is the first thing. Now, we recently in the state of Florida just increased teachers' wages as a starting salary. But what we haven't done is we haven't done that for retention of those veteran teachers. And so we might be able to encourage them to start off in a job in education. But right now, with the way things are, they'll be in that job for 5 years and then be like, well, this isn't worth it. I'm not getting paid any more than I was if I just entered. So we need to look at increasing veteran teachers' pay as well. And again, in the state of Florida here, we are woefully behind other states in the nation. And we need to pick that up. And I think when we do see an increase in their wages, then we will see more people look into going into those jobs.
Right. Because one of the things that I've seen over time is that we import a lot of educators. I don't know if you know that, from other countries. Like
okay, I did not know that.
Yes, that happens in other counties. That I've taken stock because I have family members who come from like places like Jamaica and other Caribbean countries, etc., that come here to work as an educator because they can't find educators in specific areas. That has happened. I've seen that happen over time. So that's why.
One thing I love about that is I think what we need to make sure we have is diversity in our schools too. We need to make sure, because all those people can teach all those children in different ways. And so that will help reach out to that child in some other better way that one teacher wasn't reaching out. They just weren't clicking with that child, but maybe with a different type of teacher, they're able to click with and understand what it is they're trying to teach them. So I love that.
Yeah. Okay. Educators are sometimes often burdened with lack of resources that they need to do their jobs. And when that happens, we know what the end result is. They dip into their own pocket to go to the store to buy the crayons and the markers and all the special things that they need in order to make their classroom work. What would you do as an educator, as a legislature, to make sure that that stops happening? We don't want them dipping in their pockets because they're not getting paid enough in the first place, right?
Yeah, absolutely right, Kevin. Yeah, and that is a problem, and I think that is a solution that comes from everywhere. That comes from the top down and from the bottom up. I think that we make sure that our local school board is helping in every way, shape, and form. When you're looking at contract negotiations and things like that they're providing all the resources that they can to the school teachers. And we look at it from my perspective, that I'm giving the administration every tool possible so that they can work those contracts as best as possible, and that we're putting in the funds that we need to. And we're not putting anything, what are called unfunded mandates, which is a huge thing right now. It's happened in the past where we're looking at trying to harden infrastructure for schools for safety. And we're looking to add resource officers, which is one thing that my opponent and I differ on. He actually voted to arm school staff, and I would never have done that. I'm all for school resource officers in schools, but that cost a lot of money to do that. And so when they demanded that all schools now need to be more secure by adding in school resource officers, that just doesn't happen. You just can't say let's just do that. We have to show that the funding sources are there.
Okay. Do you think we need to implement some kind of measures to limit the amount of students in the classroom?
Well, it's in our state constitution. It actually says so in our state constitution. We haven't been able to follow that because the people who are in office right now aren't even following to do with if they were to do their job right, they'd be funding education better because they know they'd have to meet those standards, but they're not doing their job right now.
Okay. All right. You believe that all children have the right to quality public education from K to 12. What are some of your ideas to ensure that all students have the same access to quality public educations? Schools vary in quality of the resources and education that they provide. So every school is different. You have one school down the road that offers this particular type of trade skill set to move them out. Like I think Bayside may have a CNA program, and Heritage may have something different, and etc. What would you do to make sure that we have equality in our education system?
Yes. So the first part of the question was, do I think we should have? And yes, I think that is part of what government's job is to do, is to make sure that we are providing an education for our children so that we bring forth the next generation that is going to do better. And it's actually going to increase our country and our state. It's going to, when we have better education, we have a better economy. And so that just goes hand in hand. We need to make sure that we do that. And that is part of what my job is. Again, I will mention that this is a top-down and bottom-up approach, because it comes from the family, it comes from the schools, and it comes from the school board. And me at the legislative level, I kind of look at things more at the 10,000-foot level. And I don't want to be a legislator who tries to micromanage and tries to tell everybody, you need to do this and you need to do that. I need to come in. My job is to bring forth standards. It's their job to say, here's how we're going to implement those standards. Mm-hmm. All right. So it's not my job to say, you need to implement the standard like this and you need to do that like that. I think that is one of the issues when we have bad legislators, is we have legislators who think that they're going to do everybody else's job, and it's their job to do that as well.
Okay. All right. Great. Let's talk about COVID for a second. Do you think we should have reopened schools?
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that question. And anybody who asked that question. So I called a couple of our school board members immediately when the Commissioner of Education threatened to defund our school boards if they did not open time certain. And I called them and I said, look, this is what I'm looking to get into. This is a political move. This is a poker move. This is a threat. He's got a poker hand. He's threatening you, and we need to call his bluff, because you cannot threaten the lives of your staff, of your administration, and of your students by opening prematurely. And I believe it was a premature open. We shouldn't have opened our schools in the manner that we did. It was hectic. It was chaos. Many counties didn't even know what was supposed to happen still. We were struggling to put a plan together in this county at the last minute. And it was an extremely wrong move by the Commissioner of Education to threaten to defund, and the governor followed along in suit with that, to threaten to say, we're going to pull your funding if you don't open up by this day. And it should have been based on the science. It should have been based on, what do your numbers look like? How do your infection rates look? How well are you going to be able to manage COVID and make sure that everybody is safe and that you have best practices put in place? Those should have been the answers as to when we're going to look to reopen.
Okay. Now, given the situation the way it is right now with COVID, I mean, a lot of kids are distressed. They are emotional. You can't hang out with your friends because mom and dad is putting restraint on that because of COVID. You're being cautious. Do you think we need to increase the size of counselors in our schools in order to handle what is about to happen? Go ahead.
So that's a great question. Thank you again. So one of my very dear friends is actually a school psychologist. And we had this discussion months ago, actually, maybe about a month ago. And I said, what is the detrimental impact here to our children? They haven't been able to socialize with their friends. And this is an important age where they do that. They have those interactions. And I said, as a school psychologist, what are you seeing? And her answer to me was very frank. And I took it to heart and I said, okay, I guess we're on the right path. And she said, it would be much more devastating for those children to see people die from the coronavirus by going back to school than having to deal with a few more months that they're not being able to interact with their friends. So we're at a point now where we're recognizing that they don't want to see their teachers get sick. They don't want to see their friends get sick. That is actually as much more of an impact psychologically to them than it would be to not be able to interact with their friends. Now, for the parents' point of view, what I wanted to propose in what should have been proposed in a special session that should have happened this last legislative session, they should have gone back in a special session in the last few months in the summertime, was I would have loved to seen a revolving paid leave for parents so that they can take time off, stay at home with their kids, especially as we're trying to teach them virtually, and then give them 3 or 4 weeks off with their work, paid leave, revolve that to the next parent. If they have another family member that can do it, great, and revolve that so the children can continue to stay at home and continue to do virtual learning, and they continue to be able to do it with family and friends that they're familiar with.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I think we have come to the end of our questioning. Let's see. Last one, mask mandate. Do you support mask mandate in classrooms?
I do. I do support a mask mandate. And I think the science, so really what I would say is I want to follow the science. My background is in sports medicine. I understand how science is supposed to work. I understand that you do trials and you do testing and you see what comes up and you follow along with best practices and what ends up being factual and what ends up working. And so 5-10 years ago, what we might have thought worked, it could be different now. And that's what happens with science. It improves, it evolves, it gets better. We get better technology. We're able to improve our science and improve what we can do. And if we know now that by wearing a mask that we can mitigate the spread, not necessarily stop it because of the particles and whatever, we won't get digging down into the science of it. But if we can help limit the spread, then we should do that because we can stop somebody else from being contagious and contracting coronavirus. So yes.
Okay. All right. Great. All right, Mr. Moore, I thank you so much for joining me tonight. I will be seeing you again. I believe it's on the 27th. I will put an announcement on the platform here shortly, but I believe it's on the 27th that we'll be back. And at that point in time, audience, you will be able to ask questions to Mr. Moore directly because it will be personal questions, and I'm going to be leaving it up to you guys to just shoot away. I want you to be able to ask as many questions as you possibly can so you can make your decision as to whether or not you'll be voting for Mr. Moore for this.
If they want a lot of answers, it should all be yes or no questions.
Not that easy.
Happy to be here tonight, Kevin. I appreciate all the interaction. I appreciate the questions from everybody watching. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to clarify what my opponent is putting out there, which again, I'll just stress, when you have somebody who is going to do that and basically be fraudulent, I hope that people recognize that that's not a credible source for what he says now. And especially when he's just going to lie about my family, which, you would look at as off limits politically, as talking about people's family, but he's going to talk about my family and he's going to lie about that. So I hope people look at that and say, you know what, let me continue to look at Phil's platform rather than hearing it from Randy Fine.
Okay. All right. Well, there goes your answer, guys. Hopefully you can utilize that to help make your decision if you're going to be voting early. If you do, please, the time has lapsed for us for early registration to vote. Hopefully everybody participate in that and you're registered to vote and you go out and you make your decisions on those ballot boxes. And yeah, stay tuned. We do have other candidates. 2 other candidates. Well, I think I had another one contact me today. I think Mr. Kennedy is going to be coming on the program. We just haven't given the date yet. That's going to be happening soon. And so, yeah, I think we have 3 more candidates to interview, and you as well. I will be back again on the 27th. So yeah, that's it, folks. I thank you so much. See you guys next week. We have some interesting programs next week. I think Mr. Burns is going to be in the program. We have to finalize some stuff there. And then we have, and although he's not a candidate for office, And then the Mr. Snyder will be on the program on the 22nd as well. So thank you guys again for joining me, and have yourself a good night and a good rest of the week. And we'll see you soon. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, Kevin.
Bye-bye.